Hi, this is Jessie Silverman here from Big Blue Canopy. I'm the speech pathologist here at Big Blue Canopy, here to share some helpful tips on how to improve social skills. So just providing structure to conversation. I wanted to share some of this because I know right now a lot of kids are having conversations via FaceTime or different screens like Zoom with their classmates. And I know even my 6-year-old kind of struggles with the structure of conversation. So I figured this could be helpful, obviously when we're not socially distancing, but during this time, when you do have those conversations and put on the spot to help give some organization for that. So just briefly going over the key components of conversation. So the nonverbal communication skills, so those being like eye contact, posture, body awareness, personal space, though all of those skills are very crucial and important during conversation, and they don't always come naturally to kids. Then opening conversation with a greeting instead of just flying into conversation, providing that structure like, okay, first we have to figure out a way to open the conversation, so we have to greet them. And then responding to others' questions that are prompted. So when somebody asks you a question, a response is warranted. And then also initiating questions and reciprocation. So not just answering their questions, you're asking too. So it's back and forth. And then closing conversation in an appropriate way. So going through those nonverbal communication skills, like I said, they're very important in conversation, but they don't come naturally to everyone. So nonverbal communication skills refer to the ways that people can communicate without using language. So these skills include eye contact, personal space, posture, facial expressions, gesture, appropriate tone of voice. So it sounds like you're interested, and then that active listening piece. So making sure you're listening to their responses, not just hearing them, you're actually listening and comprehending what they have to say. The importance of nonverbal communications skills. So like I said, not all individuals develop these nonverbal communication skills. They often must be taught and modeled. So I work on eye contact a lot of times with my kids in conversation if they do lack the eye contact. And, obviously just staring me in the eyes, that's not appropriate, but like being mindful, like face to face, like facing me, you don't have to directly stare into my eyes in conversation, but just letting them know, oh, when you're facing me, that lets me know you're talking to me. Like when you're down here and talking, I feel like you're talking to the floor. Or when you're over here talking, are you talking to that person over there? Oh, you're facing me again. We're having a conversation. I can tell because you're looking at my face. And then respecting others' personal space. So sometimes, I've worked on, okay, this is my bubble. I have a bubble and this is your bubble. We're going to stay in our bubble because sometimes, little kids, especially, they don't recognize that personal space boundary and they'll be on top of each other. And I try to teach, invading others' personal space during conversation may come off rude or strange or make them feel uncomfortable and they might not want to have another conversation with you. And then also teaching that upright posture. So sitting up, not slouching, not doing this, lets others know that you're interested in conversation. And appropriate facial expressions show that you're interested in the conversation. So like lifting your eyebrow, nodding, that lets them know that you're interested in what they have to say instead of just like looking like this, So those all come into play and they're very important in conversation. The importance of greeting. So some individuals need to be taught this. It doesn't come naturally for all kids that, before you fly into a conversation, you need to greet someone first to open that. That's the appropriate way to get their attention that you want to talk with them. So some individuals, some of my kids, like they might just burst into conversation without a proper greeting or opening, and then conversation becomes scattered. They've got something in their mind like, guess what, my dog ran away. Like, oh, okay. Wait a minute. What did you want to I haven't seen you since last week. What could you maybe tell me to open conversation? Oh, hi, Miss Jessie. How are you? So I also teach that greetings must occur with the following in place. When they're doing the back and forth conversation with me, it's a little bit easier to teach like, oh, did you have my attention? But kids are more spontaneous. So like when they're on the playground, I teach them ways like, okay, you could wave, you could say hi. That still might not get their attention. So maybe then you could use their name like, hey, Ryan, or gently tap them on the shoulder to get their attention. And then teaching like a general broad question to open conversation, like, how are you today? Or how's it going? Or what are you up to? And then you can go into conversation on a more specific topic. So it's a little bit more organized, not as scattered as just like flying into like whatever thought is in their head. And then the skills during conversation. So responding to others' questions. Like I said, when there's a question asked, response is warranted. So making sure that you're responding to questions that are prompted in conversation. And then the importance of initiating questions in conversation and reciprocation. So I teach my kids, you know, some kids, they don't realize that conversation should be two-sided. It's not just one-sided. It's not just you talking about yourself and what you, or the person listening to what you have to say. So keeping individuals mindful that they need to ask their communication partner questions also, instead of just answering questions and talking about themselves. And then the importance of topic maintenance, staying on topic. It's difficult for some kids. So reminding them, you know, like questions, like follow-up questions, they should be relevant to the topic of conversation. Sometimes, like I said, they get these scattered thoughts like, oh, a thought goes into the head, I need to ask it immediately. Like say we're talking about my dog, like all of a sudden they ask, do you have kids? It's like, oh, I try to redirect, but we're talking about my dog right now. Maybe keep that question up here and we'll figure out a way to bring that into conversation. So like teaching them proper ways to bridge to a new topic. Like, oh yeah, you have a dog. Oh, and I was wondering, do you have kids? You do have kids. So teaching them ways that they can bridge to a new topic, but it's not just like scattered like, oh, question because I'm interested in knowing this right away. I need an answer. And then teaching them to be mindful of conversational turn taking and not to dominate conversation, especially like in group settings. I've seen this with some of my kids where it's hard for them to take turns in conversation. They just want to dominate and talk about themselves. So sometimes I've used talking sticks, so like a little magic wand, like, okay, whoever has this wand has the floor. That means no interrupting right now. And if you think of something, keep it in your thought bubble, keep it up here. And then when it's your turn with the talking stick, you can try to remember that. Or, you know, if it's hard for them to keep it up here, like maybe you can write it down or draw a picture that can remind you to bring it up later in conversation. So it controls some of that impulsivity during conversation. Like, oh, I want to know this answer now, so I'm going to blurt something out. So just being mindful of that conversational turn taking and not dominating conversations. And then the attention and active listening piece. So I teach my kids, you know, you are not just hearing what they have to say, you actually have to listen and comprehend what they're saying. So paying attention and active listening during conversation lets the other person know that you're interested in what they have to say. So sometimes if I see my kids kind of tuning out and like going into outer space, I'll randomly prompt a question like, oh, what did Johnny just say about his teacher? And if they are tuning out and they forget, like, oh, I don't know, can you repeat that? I then emphasize the importance of paying attention during conversation. You know, like if you listen to what he has to say the first time and he doesn't have to repeat himself, he's going to want to have another conversation with you. But if he knows every time you have a conversation, you're not actually listening and you keep saying, oh, what did you say? Or say that again, they're going to get frustrated and they might not want to have another conversation with you. And then closing conversations. So, you know, so I do have some kids where they heard what they wanted to hear and then they just up and walk away. And I have to remind them like, oh, were you finished talking to Johnny? Oh, okay, well, we need to figure out how to close this. We can't just walk away because we're not done talking to him yet. So then teaching them to end conversation. And I try to teach them a way to end conversation other than just abruptly saying bye and walking away, because that's not fully appropriate either. So I try to model like a follow-up comment like, it was nice talking to you today, or I will see you tomorrow. Ways that you can end the conversation where it's not as abrupt. It's just like, bye, see ya. So those are all the tips that I wanted to go over today. Hopefully this provides some structure for those conversations. Like I said, there's many of those going on right now via screens. And I know a lot of kids kind of, they're not used to having these conversations like that. And it's hard for them to be mindful, like, oh, your teacher just asked you a question. What would you answer? Or, oh, what could you ask her back? So hopefully this can help with some of those conversations that are going on. And once we get back and we're not socially distancing ourselves, when we can actually have face-to-face conversations, hopefully these can help as well. If you have any questions, my email is j.silverman@bigbluecanopy.com, and I can hopefully provide some answers to any questions you may have. Thanks for joining me today.